What the actual... job?
Hello and welcome back to What the Actual Job, where I interview people about their careers so that high school students can gain a better understanding of the jobs they'd like to pursue in the future. Today's interview is with Sarah Marcantonio, who is a police officer with the Ottawa Police.
Hi, my name is Constable Sarah Marcantonio. I am a police officer with the Ottawa Police Service working in the Youth Community Unit for the past 6 years.
What does a typical day look like for you?
Well, a typical day for me, because I work in the youth section, I have a lot of appointments with youth in the community and at schools. Like today I'm meeting with you, which is very different from my 10 years of patrol. So when you're on patrol, you're basically signed on and you're basically waiting for 911 calls to come in.
Okay.
So those calls come in on priority between 1 and 6. So 1 being the greatest priority and 6 being the least. So if it's a priority 1 call, usually it's police, fire, ambulance going for some form of emergency. It could be a fire, it could be someone in medical distress. It could be an active crime in progress. Priority 4 to 6 might end up in a queue. And if it ends up in the queue, it's not a priority. And then when an officer becomes available, they go to the calls that are in the queue. So priority 1, 2, 3 take priority, and then 4, 5, 6 sit in the queue and wait for officers.
Interesting.
So my typical day is just meeting people out in the community. As a community resource officer, I go to community centers, I go to the Boys and Girls Clubs, I meet people at school, I make those kind of connections out in the community. And then if I meet someone at school and they might have some information, then I can follow up with them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you like most about your job and what makes you want to come to work every day?
So for me, working as a police officer and working in the youth section, my passion is working with youth. So, and a youth would be defined as anyone under the age of 18. So I get to spend a lot of time with 4, 5, 6-year-olds, being the friendly police officer, handing out stickers and tattoos. But then I also get to spend a lot of time with teenagers, which I also like. And the Ottawa Police actually has a lot of programs for teenagers, including our YIPPY program that runs in the winter and summer. So YIPPY stands for Youth and Policing Initiative. So in the summertime, we hire about 38 students to work for us, and we do all kinds of things in the community. Some of our youth will work in the police station. Some of them will work at the Boys and Girls Club or day camps all over the city. And then we also have our YAC, so our Youth Advisory Committee. So it's a committee of youth starting at the age of 14. And youth is used lightly in the terms that some of our YAC members are up to 28. And the reason why they're so old is because they start when they're young and they love it so much they don't leave. And that's a committee that meets once a month at the police station. And we talk about all kinds of things that are happening that we're noticing in our schools. And the Youth Advisory Committee helps educate the police officers. We have several police officers that also sit on the committee to kind of understand what's happening in our community, what's happening in our schools. So we're kept up to date. Yeah, I just love meeting youth. I love making referrals. So if a youth is having a problem, they don't know where to turn to, we have a lot of access to different places that we can refer them. And then also a lot of people, meeting people in the community. I might not have had the opportunity for me to meet them, but they might not have had the opportunity to meet a police officer on a day where I just kind of come in with a coffee, wanting to play ping pong at the Boys and Girls Club, and they're like, why are you here? What's the emergency? And there is no emergency. It's all about, building our community and having the youth trust in police and having us show up on a day where maybe we're not needed, but we're able to go in and have a positive interaction without their needing a 911 call. And, we get to show up and have fun and build that community connection. Yeah.
And showing that police officers being there isn't always a bad thing.
No, it's not always a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. So community policing is all about building that community and getting to know your local friendly police officers and building that trust versus meeting us on one of your worst days, which is usually how we end up meeting people. It's a 911 call. Nobody wants to call 911. Nobody wants police, ambulance, fire to show up at their house or their school. But unfortunately, that's usually how it works. So
Yeah.
we're really starting to work on the model of community policing, and how do we be there on the good day? How do we
Yeah.
be there at those events and those community events and, fundraising and, all those things that are happening in the community, we're now being invited to more often. And then in the summertime, we bring our Yippee students, and we do some really cool things. And people get to see us sometimes in uniform, sometimes out of uniform, and just being a part of the community that we also live in.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah.
What is the hardest part about being a police officer?
Well, the hardest part about being a police officer is, I think I just touched on it, is that usually police show up on somebody's worst day, right? So when there's a 911 call, we go. It's very reactive work. And sometimes we attend calls, we attend situations that, in a lifetime, a regular person in society would never have that experience.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of horrific things, unfortunately, car accidents, medical calls where people have died. Obviously, there's murders, there's suicides, crime. So quite often we're seeing things that we can't unsee.
Yeah.
And we have to kind of learn how to process that information and show up the next day and be committed to the job and keep coming back, even though every day we see something that maybe we don't really want to see. But at the same time, we signed up for this job. And I think when we sign up for this job, we don't realize exactly what we're going to be involved in until it starts happening.
Yeah.
The things that I've seen in my 18 years of my career, we carry that every day, and there's lots of incidences, traumatic incidences that I've been at that are years ago when I was new on patrol, or, my first 5 years, that are clear in my mind.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to work through those things.
What is the most valuable or significant thing you've learned from your career?
Police have the opportunity to really impact people's lives.
Yeah.
And sometimes I forget that, so every now and again, I'm reminded of me being in the right place at the right time and really being able to impact people's lives. And also what's valuable is, life is short. Like, as a police officer, we see a lot of death. And I think that makes us appreciate the small things, right? We don't take life for granted because we never know when our end is going to come. And we do see a lot of tragic events, and a lot of those events do involve, younger people where life might be cut short. So I think, for me, waking up in the morning and seeing the sun out and just being able to get out of bed and function, like, I think a lot of people take that stuff for granted.
Yeah.
And I think as a police officer, I'd like to think most of us don't.
What education did you do to become a police officer?
I'm in my 50s. So I went to college in my late teens, and I did a program at Algonquin College called the Correctional Worker Program.
Oh.
That program no longer exists.
Yeah.
And I think it's called the Criminal Justice Program, which is what replaced it. So in the sense of education, to become a police officer, you don't need to have a secondary education. However, in saying that, education, if I was to tell anyone who wants to be a police officer, I would definitely be pointing in the direction, any education is good education. But obviously, if you want to become a police officer, having a focus in social services and mental health are key, because that's the biggest things that we deal with. But if you're really interested in a career in policing, I would definitely be focusing on the volunteering in the community and the programs that really address social issues and mental health.
Is your career what you thought it'd be when you started, and are there any expectations that turned out different from reality?
One thing I didn't realize signing up to become a police officer is how much administrative work there is.
Yeah.
So, you think you get in your car, you go to 911 calls, you go to this call, to that call, to that call. But every time we attend a call, we have to follow policies and procedures.
Yeah.
And if there's certain policies that require us to write a report, every single call requires us to write notes. So that's kind of something that was a little eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of politics when it comes to policing, lots of politics. Most of us will say we sign up because we want to help people. but I don't think none of us realize how it affects our own mental health. I didn't realize how much of that stuff that we carry, and I don't think you realize that until you're in it and until you see it. And I feel 18 years into my career, I do that, and I feel successful at doing that.
So how do you, as a police officer, make a memorable impact?
We show up and we commit. And I think in my role as a youth officer, I have all kinds of things going on in the community, and I have commitments and dates and times that I need to be places. And for me, it's really important that I make those appointments, because you can imagine if, the kids at the Boys and Girls Club are expecting me on Tuesdays to play badminton and I don't show up.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to show up. And I also think, with kids, there's a lot of kids that are raised not to trust the police.
Yeah.
And, if a parent has had a bad experience, that experience might be passed on to a child, and then that kid might fear the police. We want to teach our youth that you can go to a police officer and you can ask for help, because we know as youth, we all make mistakes, right? We have programs within the Ottawa Police where we can help families that are in need, that I end up meeting when I go to different places and these different appointments and these different outreach projects that I do. I might meet a kid that needs some help, and then I come in and then I can help.
What makes an excellent police officer?
Someone who's compassionate, someone that wants to help others. I think as a police officer, you have to be outgoing, strike up a conversation with anybody all the time. Also being able to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Patience is really important. Having skills to be able to de-escalate situations, and being committed to the work that we do.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a career in policing?
So my biggest advice is not to be in a hurry, and to get that life experience, and volunteer as much as you can, because our community needs volunteers. And there's so many opportunities that why wouldn't you volunteer?
And then we have a few questions from students. What is the weirdest or funniest thing someone has said to you while on duty?
The other day I went to a community center. There were a bunch of kids, and one of the kids said to me, "How old are you?" So I said, I'm 29. And I kind of giggled, and I said, the funny thing is I turn 29 every year. I turn 29. And she looked at me and she's like, "There's no way you're 29. And I was like, okay, time to leave now, because clearly I don't look 29. So that was funny. Like, kids say the darndest things, right? They really do.
The next question is, do police officers actually like donuts?
Police officers actually like donuts.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a bit of a stereotype, but I will say I will never be caught in uniform eating a donut.
When does a police officer go undercover?
So we have what's called our surveillance team. So if there's an active investigation, like let's say, hypothetically speaking, it's a murder, and that's a big investigation. So our murder investigations can take quite some time. The detective in that section might ask for some surveillance on a person, a subject that they might be watching. So they might call in for surveillance to do that. If there's like an area that's being targeted and, we don't have a positive identification, we might have our surveillance team go in and sit on that property or that area to kind of watch what's coming and going. So there's different reasons when surveillance comes in.
And then the last one is, do you enjoy cop shows or do you find them difficult to watch?
I actually love documentaries, so crime documentaries, because they're reality. They actually happened, you watch them unfold and you can relate to some of those things. But I cannot watch The Rookie or what's it called, 911. There's a whole bunch of them, because none of that stuff is true. It's a real struggle.
Are there any final comments or things you'd like to say?
I don't think we've touched on social media. And I think social media is a huge part of a lot of people's lives, obviously youth. I know for myself, I'm on social media all the time, and I think a lot of us are. And I think a lot of the way the police are perceived in social media, it's always the video starts at the worst time, where there's a lot of assumptions being made with how police are doing their jobs or how they're portrayed doing their jobs. And I think a lot of our youth are watching these videos on TikTok and, Instagram that are being circulated that really don't help the reputation of police. And a lot of the time it's because the true story isn't told.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to touch on that because a lot of the times when we're, watching 3 hours of TikTok, I'm guilty of doing it. We start to see our algorithms are starting to show us a lot of these videos where I just think a lot of time it's not a true prediction of how we're portrayed. And I think it causes a really bad reputation with the police. And a lot of the things that we're watching are not Canadian based. They're in the States, and things are very different in the States as a police officer. I think a lot of people have their biases about police, and a lot of it comes from social media versus actually meeting a police officer and having that conversation. You and I met at the Yippee program, and you might not have had that opportunity to meet a police officer, and I'm just a regular person. I just happen to do this job.
Thank you again to Sarah Marcantonio for that amazing interview about a career in policing. If you want to listen to this episode or others like it, you can listen here on CKCU 93.1 FM or wherever you listen to podcasts.